The question that is posed in the title of this video is, why do footballers demand higher wages? It is a question which might seem incredibly obvious to answer. To earn more money, stupid, I suspect a lot of you are saying to yourselves. That is why most people want higher wages, and it seems to be pretty straightforward. The more money you earn, the more things you can buy, the more stuff you can do, and the more you can tuck away for retirement. But at the elite level, whether that is in football or in a number of other similar industries, and I do mean similar in a very specific sense there, a lot of the time, most of the time even, I would suggest, the money itself is not the primary motivating factor when it comes to asking for more money. It is counterintuitive, I know, but hear me out. I want to be very specific here because just using England as our case study for a moment, outside of the Premier League and certainly below Championship level, when most players ask for a wage hike, it is about the money. Whilst there are 50 Sky Bet League One players who earn £5,000 a week or more, which is equivalent to over £250,000 a year and puts them firmly among the top 1% of income earners in the United Kingdom, they are a long way off the so-called super rich in terms of income and typically even further away when it comes to wealth. The average Sky Bet League 2 player reportedly earns £114,000 a year. A terrific salary, no doubt, but with a family and kids to support, often as the sole breadwinner in their household, and in an industry with notoriously short careers, which could end at any minute with a serious enough injury, and often limited skills, and therefore job prospects following retirement, most League 2 players aren't living like kings. So when players at that level, and with that kind of income, ask for higher wages, they do so to pay the mortgage, bills, rent, childcare costs, and so on and so forth, while still being able to save a bit for retirement, go on a nice summer holiday, and generally have a higher standard of living. In fact, it might surprise you to discover that although a footballer earning £114,000 a year would be among the top 3% of earners in the United Kingdom, many of them actually face significant difficulties getting a mortgage at all, unless they are able to save up an enormous deposit. That's due to the nature of their precarious employment, even on a high wage, often only on short-term contracts and with no guarantees of future earning potential to show a bank. That is why many footballers, even those on even higher salaries, tend to rent rather than buy their homes, along with the fact that they are also very prone to moving around. However, for the big hitters, established first-team Premier League players, where the average wage is now over £60,000 a week, they no longer have any of those problems. The very highest paid footballers, whilst they rarely threaten the Sunday Times rich list, have reached a level of financial insulation which is exclusive to the ultra-wealthy, whereby incremental increases in wealth and income are rendered almost meaningless in terms of your spending power and day-to-day living, unless you plan on buying a mega yacht, a fleet of private jets, and your own private island, which most footballers don't. At this level of wealth, and we see it among very highly paid Hollywood actors, ultra-high earning bankers, and certain company CEOs and directors, the wage or pay ceases to be about the real-world impact of that income, and what it is worth to you, and has much more to do with status. If you take someone like Mohamed Salah, who is rumoured to want a wage hike at Liverpool, he reportedly earns £225,000 a week on his current contract, which he signed in 2018 and is due to run until 2023. That is almost £12 million a year before taxes, which would eat away about half of it, though that is also before any commercial income is taken into account, bearing in mind that Salah is the most marketable athlete in Africa, and that they account for a further £11.3 million, which is taxed at a lower rate and is therefore worth more to Salah than his actual playing contract at Liverpool. Salah's wage demands are said to be between £300,000 to £380,000 a week. But even if he gets the full £380,000, or let's just say Liverpool are feeling extra generous and decide to double his salary to £450,000 a week, that still isn't going to change Salah's life that much. He is very unlikely to go out and buy a car that is twice as expensive, a house that is twice as expensive, or take vacations that are twice as expensive, simply because he earns, pre-tax, twice as much. Nothing materially is likely to change in his life. So why even bother asking for more money? Well, if Virgil van Dijk earns £240,000 a week, Anthony Martial earns £250,000 a week, and Cristiano Ronaldo earns £480,000 a week, Mohamed Salah could be forgiven for thinking that whilst he already earns more than most people could ever dream of imagining, his talent, level of performance, and importance to Liverpool is being undervalued and is worthy of him being paid more. The amount of money that is actually deposited into his bank account each month is effectively irrelevant. It is about the club acknowledging his effort, ability, and what he is worth to them. Thiago Alcantara is reportedly being paid £225,000 a week by Liverpool, the same as Mohamed Salah. Make no mistake, Thiago is a wonderful footballer and is as gifted as almost anyone in the Premier League. But is anyone seriously going to suggest that he is worth as much to Liverpool as Mohamed Salah? I highly doubt they would. And if they did, you could be forgiven for dismissing them as being either daft or insincere. There are also obviously market forces at play, in the sense that if Liverpool won't pay Mohamed Salah £300,000 to £380,000 a week, someone else almost certainly will, which I will return to briefly later on, but I don't want to get too into the weeds with that because it doesn't actually address the key issue of why elite level footballers want higher wages. It just part explains why they are able to get them. When footballers are asked why they seek higher wages, which doesn't happen very often and is obviously a pretty loaded and invasive question that is likely to turn an interview pretty frosty pretty fast, but on those rare occasions, they often talk about securing their family's future. We most often hear this when a player has made what might be deemed to be an unpopular move, joining a less illustrious club in a less competitive league or country for a higher wage than was on offer in, say, the Premier League or La Liga. And I don't wish to dismiss this claim, but I would like to talk a little bit more about it. When Oscar was asked why he took the decision to leave Chelsea, where he was on course to win his second Premier League title that season at the age of 25, to join Shanghai SIPG, or Shanghai Port as they are now, he said, quote, "When I made the decision to come here, I was thinking more of my family than of my career. I had other very good offers from big teams in Europe, but I thought a little more of my family. And after that, I am still young, I can return." End quote. Similarly, and even more recently, when fellow Brazilian Mateus Pereira left West Bromwich Albion to join Al Hilal in Saudi Arabia last summer, also aged 25 at the time, despite having an offer on the table from West Ham, he wrote in a statement on Twitter that, quote, "3 weeks ago I received an offer that would change my life and my family's life forever." Later adding, "To achieve financial freedom at 25 would be unimaginable." End quote. In the past, I have always been rather dubious about this argument. Pereira, for example, was reportedly offered pretty much identical contracts by West Ham and Al Hilal, but chose the latter because there is no income tax in Saudi Arabia. Meanwhile, one would imagine that Oscar was earning at least £100,000 a week at Chelsea and could have earned the same or more elsewhere in Europe. £100,000 a week before tax works out at around £230,000 a month after tax in the United Kingdom, so almost £2.8 million a year. The wish to secure your family's future and make sure they are taken care of is, I think, an entirely legitimate one, and it is one that is hardly exclusive to footballers. However, it has always been my view that it is quite easy to secure your family's future on £230,000 a month, and that the difference between £230,000 a month and £400,000 or £500,000 a month would seem to be about a little bit more than just your family's comfort and well-being. Once you have several £1,000,000 and are still earning several million more each year, securing your family's future no longer means ensuring that you can pay the bills each month or put food on the table. It either means making sure that your children are absolutely filthy rich without them having to do a single thing, or it means securing your family's financial freedom for about 15 generations, by which stage humans will surely have rendered the planet uninhabitable or have blown each other up, neither of which seem like particularly noble goals to me. As I say, that has long been my view, and in some ways it still is. But it is very easy for me to say that because I have never known poverty, and therefore do not live in fear of it. I ran out of money at 19. Who doesn't? But I always knew that I had parents and a family who would put a roof over my head and look after me in that situation, providing me with a comprehensive safety net until I was able to make a living doing something stupid like making YouTube videos about why footballers ask for higher wages. Many footballers, unlike most high earners, were raised in impoverished households, where food was scarce and concerns about a lack of money tore the family apart, imposing a state of abject misery and fear about how to navigate the coming days, weeks, and months. It is well studied that those who are raised in crippling poverty can often live in constant fear of those conditions returning, or of their children having to experience what they did, even if their life circumstances have changed to such an extent that that is no longer a rational concern. Therefore, despite being enormously wealthy, they gravely overcompensate to the point of hoarding wealth, even if they have little desire to ever spend it, often not in very wise places like having vast amounts of cash stashed away in a bank account getting eaten away by inflation, or worse still, hidden away under their floorboards. There is also a more charitable interpretation, quite literally, of why some players might want more money. And that's because they have their own philanthropic foundations or projects that they want to pour money into. And the more money they earn, the more that they can plough into those projects. I would personally be rather wary of that explanation because virtually every extremely wealthy person has some kind of foundation where they make their tax-deductible donations to profess their profound virtue, all the while their net worth somehow seems to keep on climbing. It's funny how that works. However, I am sure there are instances where that is in a player's mind when they seek greater financial remuneration, even if it is only very rarely their primary motivation. What's more, whilst I am still waiting for anyone to do any actual research into this, I strongly suspect that footballers are much more charitable than their similarly wealthy and well-paid counterparts in other industries, largely by virtue of the fact that they often come from poorer, more working-class backgrounds and have greater ties to their communities and awareness of the difficulties that people face than those who were born into great wealth or even just great comfort. There is a fourth and final reason why footballers might ask for higher wages, though, again, I think we are talking about a very small number of instances, and that is because they do actually need the money. That might seem ludicrous, the idea that someone who earns £100,000 plus a week could possibly need any more than that, and in many ways it is, but there are many horror stories that show that a very high salary does not necessarily mean financial security. As I covered in a video last year, 40% of footballers go bankrupt either during their careers or in retirement, and even the highest earners are not immune from suffering such a fate. There is such a thing as lifestyle creep that many of you will have heard of, I'm sure. The basic theory goes that if you earn £20,000 a year, you learn to live within your means. But should you get a pay rise and start earning £30,000 a year, instead of saving any of that extra income, you just spend more. Therefore, your income has increased, but your wealth has plateaued and you are no more financially secure. With some people, and indeed some footballers, they get themselves into situations of such extreme lifestyle creep that even a truly exorbitant income cannot keep pace with their eye-watering outgoings. Some players, particularly those from South American or African backgrounds, will be supporting extended family members and even large entourages, all of whom are either formally or informally on their payroll, living off their salary as footballers. If you're paying for enough people's homes, cars, and so on, it almost doesn't matter how much you earn, eventually that will catch up with you. Throw in a messy divorce or two, poor financial advice, or even worse still, a gambling addiction, or indeed all of the above, and you could conceivably end up racking up debt despite earning tens or even hundreds of thousands of pounds a week. These things do happen, and certain players have even been known to ask for their wages and bonuses to be paid early or in one lump sum in order for them to deal with such situations. But during the peak earning years of an elite level footballer, when their earning potential is so great, it must be said that they are vanishingly rare. Footballers' wages are always a topic of great debate and discussion. A little too much debate and discussion, dare I suggest, given that despite a small number of footballers earning astronomical amounts of money, they don't even scratch the surface when it comes to the truly ultra-rich in society. The alternative to top-level footballers being paid a fortune is to cap players' wages, which would just result in clubs, almost all of whom are now owned by billionaires, profiting from the talent and popularity of the players that they employ, who would now receive a smaller slice of that pie in terms of the revenue that football generates. Some people will have absolutely no problem with Cristiano Ronaldo earning £480,000 a week and David De Gea earning £375,000 a week. Others will find those sums nauseating and think that no one needs that much money. But whatever your thoughts on that particular issue, they are at least the people that vast numbers of us pay to watch live and on TV, rather than just being the billionaire owner of a club who, in all truth, none of us really care about. The only way to limit players' wages and prevent that money from simply being siphoned off by those at the top, who already have far more money than the players that they employ, would be to introduce greater regulation on clubs when it comes to allocating capital and redistribution. A meaningful change in that regard in the Premier League is, I suspect, not just unlikely, but downright fanciful. I am in great danger of drifting into the realm of politics here, which, as you all know, I never do, but there is an argument to be had that the nature of why extremely high earners seek higher wages, largely due to status rather than actually needing or even wanting a higher income, means that the best form of redistribution is simply taxation. In the UK, the highest rate of income tax is 45%, and that kicks in on any income above £150,000 a year. There will be those who say that is far too high, and those who feel that it is much too low. But what is perhaps less debatable is the fact that it is quite a low threshold for the highest rate of tax to kick in. Earning £200,000 a year makes you a very high earner, but £200,000 a year is very different to £200,000 a week, or the £1.28 million a day that Bet365 boss Denise Coates paid herself in the last tax year. Yet, someone on £200,000 a year, like a footballer playing in League One, pays the same top rate of tax as someone like Denise Coates, who paid herself £469 million last year. That is why some people have called for more than 3 income tax brackets, which is all there currently are in the United Kingdom, and perhaps one that could kick in on earnings over £500,000, £1 million, and perhaps even a super top rate over £10 million. If what really matters to super rich footballers and bankers, for example, is the number and earning more than the person sat opposite them who they think that they are better than, then paying a higher rate of tax is effectively meaningless, aside from your own personal views on where taxation should be set as a point of principle. Returning to football though, given that the government in the UK has recently raised taxes to their highest level in 70 years, it is worth asking the question of whether the Premier League would be a less attractive proposition to players if the United Kingdom had a higher top rate of marginal tax. I think the answer is maybe a little bit, but not really. Clubs would claim that the cost would be passed on to them, and would kick up a bit of a fuss about that, and that they would have to make up the shortfall simply by paying players more so that their after-tax earnings remain the same. But even that would be a slightly dubious claim. Whilst a handful of players might try their hand in China, though even that is in doubt now with the league in meltdown and wages not being quite what they once were, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and other far-flung leagues where they are basically banished to worldwide obscurity and most likely overlooked by their national teams, there are only a handful of clubs in Europe, Real Madrid, PSG, Bayern Munich, maybe Barcelona, we'll see what happens there, who could offer a player as much money after tax as most Premier League teams, even with a 60% tax rate on earnings over £1 million, for example. I would be interested to hear some of your thoughts on that, and I must admit, I had entire 10-minute segments on agents and on the wage structure of Premier League footballers compared to the wider economy that I wasted loads of time researching and planning, but I'm aware that this video is already rather long, and I think I addressed the initial point outlined in the title fairly comprehensively about 3 or 4 minutes ago, so I will leave it there and save those issues for future videos perhaps. Thank you all very much as ever for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Hit the like button if that was the case. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, and make sure you're subscribed and have notifications turned on for HITC Sevens. You can also find me on social media, on either Twitter or Instagram, or indeed both, via the username @HITC Sevens on both, should you wish to do so.